Walter White is obviously one of the smartest characters in Breaking Bad. But is he actually smarter than Gustavo Fring, Saul Goodman, Mike? Because being smart in Breaking Bad isn't just about knowing
chemistry, but thanks.
So I came up with these 5 categories to assess how intelligent each character really is. Knowledge, planning, problem solving, social intelligence, and adaptability. Every character gets a score from 1 to 10 in each category, for a maximum of 50 points. And after going over every character, 2 people separated themselves from everybody else. Let's start at number 10, Tuco Salamanca. Tuco probably isn't the first person you'd think of when you hear the word smart, but he's not stupid. He's a successful drug distributor, he knows how the business works, and he's very good at recognizing when someone might be a threat. The problem is, Tuco's intelligence is constantly destroyed by his temper. He doesn't think through the consequences of his actions, and that's a really important distinction for this list. Being intelligent doesn't mean much if you can't control your own decisions. Tuco gets a 6 out of 10 for knowledge, a 5 out of 10 for planning, a 6 out of 10 for problem solving, 6 out of 10 for social intelligence, and 4 out of 10 for adaptability. That adds up to a score of 27 out of 50. He's dangerous. He's just not particularly intelligent compared to the people above him. Moving on to number 9, Lydia. Lydia is a completely different type of intelligent. She understands how Gus's international drug operations work. She's also very good at managing information. Lydia understands what people want to know, what they need to know, and what she needs to keep hidden. But Lydia has a major weakness, paranoia. And unlike Gus, she doesn't handle uncertainty very well. As the situation gets more complicated, Lydia becomes increasingly desperate and makes worse decisions. She's smart enough to survive in the drug business for a long time, but she isn't good enough at adapting when things stop going according to her plan. Lydia gets an 8 out of 10 for knowledge, 8 out of 10 for planning, 7 out of 10 for problem solving, 7 out of 10 for social intelligence, and 5 out of 10 for adaptability. This gives her a score of 35 out of 50. Moving on to number 8, Gale. If this list was entirely based on academic intelligence, Gale would probably be near the top. He's an exceptional chemist. He understands exactly what makes Walt's products so good, and he's capable of producing extremely high quality meth himself. Gale also helps establish the super lab and understands the scientific process at a level that very few characters in the show can match. So why is he only number 8? This is because Breaking Bad isn't a chemistry exam. Gale understands science, but he doesn't understand the criminal world at all. He trusts people who are more dangerous than he realizes, and he doesn't anticipate how far Walt is willing to go to protect himself. He's incredibly intelligent in one area, but the smartest people in Breaking Bad can operate across several different areas at once. Gale gets a 10 out of 10 for knowledge, a 7 out of 10 for planning, 7 out of 10 for problem solving, 5 out of 10 for social intelligence, and 6 out of 10 for adaptability, giving him a final score of 35 out of 50. Moving on to a fan favorite, Jesse Pinkman. Jesse might be the most underrated character on this list. If you judge Jesse based on only the beginning of the show, he'd probably be near the bottom. He's reckless, inexperienced, and constantly makes emotional decisions. But Jesse learns, and that's one of the biggest signs of intelligence. Over the course of the series, he learns how the drug business works, becomes capable of producing high-quality meth by himself, and eventually develops a much better understanding of people around him. Most importantly, Jesse becomes much better at recognizing Walt's manipulation. By the later seasons, he understands that Walt is capable of lying to him and controlling situations around him. And eventually, Jesse figures out that Walt was involved in Brock's poisoning. That's a huge moment because Jesse is finally able to see through the person who manipulated him for years. Jesse isn't academically brilliant, but he's adaptable. And that's why I think he scores surprisingly well. Jesse gets a 6 out of 10 for knowledge, 5 out of 10 for planning, 8 out of 10 for problem solving, 8 out of 10 for social intelligence, and 9 out of 10 for adaptability, giving him a final score of 36 out of 50. Up next is Hank Schrader. Hank is probably the best investigator on this list. For most of Breaking Bad, he doesn't even know Walter is Heisenberg, but look how close he eventually gets. Hank investigates Gale, then he starts looking into Gus, then he connects Gus to the meth operation. He investigates the laundromat. He eventually discovers the existence of the superlab, and after months of chasing Heisenberg, Hank finally realizes that the person he's been looking for has been sitting right in front of them this entire time. That's not luck, that's investigative intelligence. Hank's biggest strength is his ability to take seemingly unrelated pieces of information and to connect them. But he's not perfect. His assumptions sometimes slow him down, and he doesn't always recognize how close the answer actually is. Still, when it comes to actually solving a mystery, Hank is one of the best characters in the series. I'd give him scores for knowledge 8 out of 10, planning 8 out of 10, problem solving 9 out of 10, social intelligence 7 out of 10, and adaptability 8 out of 10. This gives him a score of 40 out of 50. Moving on to number 5 on my list, Skyler White. Skyler is one of the most underrated intelligent characters in Breaking Bad. She isn't a scientist, she isn't a drug dealer, she's not a criminal mastermind, but she understands people, and she understands Walt. Very early on, Skyler realizes that Walt's explanations don't make sense. She notices the money, she notices his behavior, and once she finally learns the truth, she quickly realizes that simply knowing about the money isn't enough. She needs to figure out how to make the money look legitimate. That's where the car wash comes in. Skyler understands the financial side of Walt's operation and helps turn illegal money into something that can actually enter the legitimate economy. She's also extremely good at adapting to situations she was never expected to be in. Her biggest weakness is that she's often reacting to Walt rather than controlling the situation herself, but that's still impressive considering what she's dealing with. I'd give Skyler an 8 out of 10 for knowledge, 8 out of 10 for planning, 9 out of 10 for problem solving, 9 out of 10 for social intelligence, and 8 out of 10 for adaptability, giving her a final score of 42 out of 50. Now we're getting to the characters who are borderline geniuses. Mike's intelligence is almost the opposite of Walt's. Walt likes proving that he's the smartest person in the room. Mike doesn't need anyone to know that he's smart. He just prepares. Before Mike does something, he thinks about what could go wrong. He understands surveillance. He understands security. He understands criminals. And most importantly, he understands people. Mike realizes Walt's personality problems almost immediately. He knows Walt is emotional. He also knows Walt has an ego. And he knows that eventually, Walt is going to be the problem. Mike's entire approach is based around eliminating problems before they become disasters. That's why he's so effective. But Mike isn't number one because his intelligence is primarily practical. He isn't a scientist like Walt. He doesn't have Gus's ability to build and manage an entire empire. And while he's extremely adaptable, he's still working within a specific skill set. Mike gets an 8 out of 10 for knowledge, 10 out of 10 for planning, 9 out of 10 for problem solving, 9 out of 10 for social intelligence, and 9 out of 10 for adaptability. That gives him a final score of 45 out of 50. Moving into our top 3, this is where I have Saul Goodman. Saul is probably the smartest person in Breaking Bad when it comes to understanding people and systems. He doesn't have Walt's scientific knowledge, he doesn't have Mike's combat skills, and he doesn't have Gus's criminal empire. But Saul knows how to get things done. Need a lawyer? Saul. Need a connection? Saul probably knows someone. Need to disappear? Saul knows a guy. His greatest ability is taking a situation that seems impossible and figuring a way around it. He understands the law, he understands criminals, he understands how police think, and most of all, he understands exactly how to manipulate people. That's why Walt and Jesse need him. Saul doesn't necessarily solve the biggest problems himself, but he knows who can solve it, and that's an extremely valuable form of intelligence. Saul gets an 8 out of 10 for knowledge, 9 out of 10 for planning, 9 out of 10 for problem solving, 10 out of 10 for social intelligence, and 9 out of 10 for adaptability, giving him a final score of 45 out of 50. Moving on to the top 2, we have Gustavo Fring. Gus Fring might be the best planner in Breaking Bad. And the crazy part is how much of his empire is built around making sure nobody realizes he's even running one. On the surface, Gus is a successful businessman. He owns Los Pollos Hermanos. He is respected in the community. He has relationships with legitimate businesses. But underneath that is a massive drug distribution operation. And Gus has spent years building it. He develops the distribution network. He builds a super lab. He maintains relationships with the cartel. and he keeps the DEA away from him. He creates layers between himself and the actual crime operation. That's what makes Gus so difficult to catch. Gus is also extremely good at reading people. He knows how to manipulate Walt. He knows how to control his employees. He understands Hector Salamanca, and he understands the cartel. So why isn't Gus number one? Because there's one thing that Walt does better: improvisation. Gus's biggest strength is control. Walt's greatest strength is what happens when he loses control. When Walt's plans fall apart, he finds another solution, and eventually, Walt uses that unpredictability to defeat Gus. Gustavo Fring gets a 9 out of 10 for knowledge, 10 out of 10 for planning, 9 out of 10 for problem solving, 10 out of 10 for social intelligence, and 9 out of 10 for adaptability, giving him a final score of 47 out of 50. That puts him comfortably ahead of everyone else except for one person, Walter White. Walter White is not number one because he's the best at one particular thing. He's number one because he's the best combination of all five. Start with knowledge. Walt is an elite chemist. That's not really debatable. But chemistry is only the beginning. Throughout the series, Walt has repeatedly solved problems that should have killed him. When Tuco becomes a threat, he uses the mercury to intimidate him. When the RV becomes a problem, he finds a way to keep it running. And when Gustavo becomes his enemy, Walt manipulates Jesse and eventually sets up Gus's death. And even when he needs to destroy Jack Welker's gang, Walt disappears for months, builds a new plan, and comes back prepared. That's probably Walt's greatest strength: adaptability. His plans go wrong constantly, but he always finds another way. He's also extremely good at manipulating people. Jesse, Skyler, Gus, Hank. And for years, he even convinces himself that everything he's doing is for his family. But there's one category where I wouldn't give Walt a perfect score: social intelligence. Walt is great at manipulating other people, but he's terrible at understanding himself. His ego is his biggest weakness. He could have accepted help from Gretchen and Elliot. He could have left the drug business. He could have stopped after making enough money, but he didn't. He wanted recognition. He wanted control. And eventually, he wanted everyone to know that he was Heisenberg. That's what makes Walt so interesting. His intelligence built his empire, but his ego destroyed it. His final scores are 10 out of 10 for knowledge, 10 out of 10 for planning, 10 out of 10 for problem solving, 9 out of 10 for social intelligence, and 10 out of 10 for adaptability, giving him a final score of 49 out of 50. And that puts Walter White at number one. Here's all the final scores. And thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.